Hey, bro, you busy tonight? What's the occasion? Oh man, no, I just want to talk to you a little bit. About what, man? Oh no, nothing really. It's just bro, do you remember when sports were around? Sports. Yeah, man, sports. You remember when people used to play on teams and stuff like that? They used to go out, we used to watch the games in stadiums and stuff, and we used to, get hyped, we used to collect cards and stuff like that for them. Dude, it's been years since a sports game has ever aired, man. I don't I mean, it's really not relevant to my life anymore. Oh, dude, well, it's just after everything that's been going on, I remember the time where we saw that game. You remember out in Philadelphia, that one game? Oh, I remember what you're talking about, the Super Bowl, right? Yeah. Oh man, that Super Bowl was amazing. What was it? The Eagles versus the what was it, the Seahawks or something like that? Yeah, man, yeah, it must have been something like that, man. It was so long ago. All I remember was that the Eagles were on the team, man. We were in Philadelphia going to school at the time, man. We were just so hyped, dude. And when they finally won, we just went crazy, man. We just took to the streets instantly. We went from main campus. Yeah, bro, it was crazy. Yeah, man, we went from main campus straight into the streets, and we just pretty much took over the city for the night. I think, oh man, we went crazy. We were taking street lights down. We were destroying everything. It was awesome. And you remember when the cops were there? Oh, dude, I remember the cops. They were like pretty much joining with us. They were so cool. When we were hanging out and doing all that stuff, the cops didn't even get angry at us. They were just kind of like, "Hey, man, do your thing. We don't have any issue with it. Just keep going. It is what it is." And we just had a blast whenever we took down the street lights and the street posts and stuff like that, or destroyed like flags or whatever. Yeah, the cops would just pick it up and, take it out and just move on with their lives. The riot cops were there to make sure that no one got killed, and we were jumping off buildings and stuff like that. It was great. It was one of the greatest moments in my life, and I'll really never forget that experience, because it was the one time, even to today, that I experienced a Super Bowl victory in a hometown city, and the amount of excitement and love that came from that place, or from our hearts, and just turned violent and I guess you could say riotty. It was a lot of fun, and I remember that. And I also remember when sports were around and people actually had fun watching things. Nowadays it's just a bunch of Netflix specials and morning talk shows. But I just wanted to introduce you guys to just a little memory of my own, where due to the political climate and social climate that's going on right now, with people from their hometowns to bigger inner cities and suburbs, even countrysides, everybody is kind of raising their voice and giving a little piece of themselves to the movement. And that movement right now is the Black Lives Matter movement. And I want to introduce you guys and welcome you to another episode of the Jargon podcast. It's your host, Ruben Gutierrez, and let's get it started. So it's been a long time since I've made an episode, and for me it feels like a long time because it's something that kind of always in my mind. And I guess I just want to touch up a little bit on why I've kind of disappeared, and kind of just, I guess in my own way, how I described it is I went into hibernation. And it's really because the global pandemic kind of destroyed all of my plans. And I think that a lot of the lessons that came from this global pandemic was that regardless of how the world acts upon you, the true test is how you react to that. And it's what we do in these moments of conflict and stress, more serious sense, in the suffering that everybody was dealing with, whether it was indirectly or directly. It had a great impact on us, and it's still having an impact on us to this day. But in terms of myself and where I was, whenever things like this happen, I always notice that people flock to social media or to the internet, or just they try to always gain some perspective from others and see what's going on. For me, myself, it may seem like the wrong decision, but it's what's always kept me at peace. And what I decided to do is I just separated myself. And I just went back into nature. That's whenever I feel like I'm too stressed out, or things are becoming a bit too much for me, and things aren't going my way, I kind of just take a step back and get back in tune into my environment, into the nature of things, and try to gain my own personal perspective on what's going on, because it's always helped me kind of get in tune and find my own inner peace, because that was really what was being ruptured, was the inner peace that I was looking for myself, and how I was going about my own goals. Because while working at the dealership, I had a goal of becoming successful at the job, making a lot of money, and eventually pursuing my goals of elevating the podcast and gaining enough money to finish school. that didn't really work out. A lot of it came from the pandemic, really, and just everything shutting down, everything slowing down, the business just kind of doing a 180 on its own practices in terms of how we kind of worked. And not to get too much into it because it is what it is and it's the nature of sales. Pretty much things weren't really working out for me. And the attitude that I had and the kindness that I kind of provided, not just for myself, but as an outlet, it really wasn't doing me any favors. It wasn't getting me anywhere. And not to say that I'm changing that or anything like that, but it's just I was kind of observing my own actions and the things that I was looking for. And I realized for myself that the most important aspect that I was looking for was control. And it's because at that job, what you want to always have is control, because that's how you make the sale. I guess in general, you make the sale by having control and kind of leading the person on or leading the person through the process, which is what we're supposed to do. And it's what's fair. You know, that's what makes us professionals, at least at that craft. Now, whether you agree, whether it's good or bad or anything like that, is just a moral discussion and semantics. And it's not really something that I'm trying to discuss, especially not with myself. So yeah, that's just the nature of the job. And it wasn't really working out for me, but thankfully I gained the understanding that I needed and the lessons. And the most important aspect for myself was really gaining that control over my own life and not allowing the peer pressure of my social group that I had in my immediate surroundings kind of dictating how I acted or how I wanted to be. Because at the end of the day, we're still people, and it's very hard to kind of get out of that when you're with the same people for a large majority of the time. It's kind of like a process to get through. And so I guess in my own way, I'm kind of just letting you guys know that I have actually left the airport. I've left the dealership, and I am now pursuing another job somewhere else. I don't really have an exact idea in mind, and I know that a major lesson that I obviously want to impart to you guys as well. Do not take my steps. I did this because it was for my own mental health and just for my own clarity. I needed to separate myself so that I could be at peace and realign. And so I wouldn't, anybody else though, or I mean, just in general, you never want to leave a job without having something set up afterwards. I left because, and it's not the best decision, but I needed some peace of mind, and that's as far as I'll go with that. But my main point is just, if you're ever in a situation like this, just be a bit more proactive. And that was something that I had to learn myself as well, in finding another job so that you can still sustain yourself. It's just been very difficult, obviously, with the pandemic, with everybody really losing their jobs. And I'm sure that most people would think that I'm an idiot for even letting go of my job. But I just want you all to know that it's just another thing for myself to make sure that I'm at a place where I can continue moving forward in a positive way, because a lot of the things that were happening to me weren't very positive, and in a lot of ways I was suppressing myself for the sake of others and not really being able to express myself the way I wanted to. And it was because in my own way I just didn't want to make waves, because in the beginning when I was working, I was making a lot of waves, and those waves kind of became tsunamis and just splashed back onto me. And in terms, nothing really worked out for myself in that way either. So I'm kind of just moving past that and trying to get in my own way to a better standing for myself. And so, long story short, I left, and I feel so much better now that I'm not there anymore. And I wish the best to everybody else who's there and everybody else who's sticking it out. I know for a fact that they're going to be doing well, because at least I hope that they treat the people who decide to stay throughout all this, throughout this whole situation, throughout the struggle, for themselves, and they really give back to them. Because the only difference for me is that this is not my end goal. It's just a stepping stone for me in terms of my own career or my own personal success. And so in terms of going back into nature and kind of recollecting, that's when I realized those lessons for myself. And once I realized that I found what I was looking for, I thought my tenure was done. And so after that, I just kind of, and this was recently too, I left about a couple weeks ago. It's nothing like, I didn't leave like a couple months ago or anything like that. But after that, now that I'm kind of in this different position for myself, I'm finding other ways to kind of progress. I'm changing my major. So I told you guys in the beginning or in earlier episodes that my major was strategic communications. Well, now I'm switching it to social work, because I want this podcast to not just be about promoting artists and local people who are working on their craft. At the same time, I want this to be a place where people can come and not just vibe, but educate themselves, learn something new, open their minds up to a different perspective, find their own perspective for themselves, and share their perspective with others. I in a lot of my videos, not many people leave comments. Like, I implore you guys, I ask you guys, leave something, let me know what you guys think, even if it's a little thing, even if you agree or disagree. Just give me your own perspective on some of these things, or of anything, so that I can kind of have like a conversation with you, and we can kind of grow from there. Because I don't really want to just continue talking to myself forever, but I do want to continue talking to you guys. Moving forward, I will, and I will continue to. So I just hope that you guys kind of give back a little bit to me too, and let me know what your thoughts are, because I'm extremely open to criticism, and I think that it's important for not just myself, but for everyone, for everyone's growth, to kind of understand and be able to pick yourself apart and learn from that. Because something that I've had to deal with for myself recently, and the layers to why I needed to kind of get back into my own nature of things, is I was looking at my parents. And the thing about it is, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this either, is that depending on who you talk to in terms of family members and the people around you, they'll tell you stories based on, at least this is my own experience, based on your personality being in tune with the person that they're talking about, to spin them in a positive light. And so when talking about my parents, I've known my mother for a very long time, because I grew up, in her household and lived with her for a long time. But my father, I never really got to know. And other than maybe when I was a baby or a couple months old, maybe a year, after that, we had little to no communication at all. And I consciously never got to hang out with him. And so all the stories that I've ever heard of him are positive or uplifting or just insightful. And some of them were kind of real, but real in the sense of, pretty much what happened to my father was that he passed away very early in his life. He passed away, I think, when he was 34. And so he didn't really have a lot of time on this planet. And it was extremely unfortunate and disheartening for me and my sister to hear when it happened, or when we found out the news, because we were kind of hoping that he was still around. It was difficult for us to get into contact because, it's just it was, long story short on that aspect, it was just very difficult because my mom and her husband at the time, her husband didn't want us to communicate with him because he thought he was trash and stuff like that. And it was just, there was just a lot of things to it, but I don't blame my mother, and it's no fault of hers. I definitely blame, my mother's husband at the time for sure, but I don't put it on her, because I understand that she was young as well, and circumstances be what they are. It's, at least for myself, I don't want to look at it that way. And so a lot of the things that I heard, like I was saying, was uplifting and positive, and it kind of just came naturally to me, like, oh, okay, he was this and that, and then, being my father's son, I was like, well, on a realistic note, I gotta one up this man, because he may be my father, but I'm my father's son. In a lot of ways, in the positive ways, I definitely feel like I have been able to kind of overcome my own stigma of trying to be better than the previous generation before me in like a negative sense. And I've just been trying to be better for myself, and maybe seeing where that progress leads. And so what I learned about my father was not just the positives, but the negatives and the problems that he had in his life, and maybe some of the reasons why he passed away so early. And when I found those things out, I decided to talk to my sister the other night, and I was kind of just talking to her and just, hey, I just need to be real with you. I need to know what was wrong with our father. What were the bad things? Did they tell you anything? Because the thing is that my sister's not only older than me, but she has a better relationship with my father's side of the family. So they just kind of communicate with her more. And so I figured that she had some of her own information. And the thing is that even with her, she had to piece together bits of information that they even gave her, because even then it was kind of sugar-coated and veiled in obscurity in terms of who he actually was. And so when she pieced it together and told me exactly what was going on, I realized I had never met this man in my life. And even then, I really am my father's son. Don't know this man at all, but all the flaws, well, not all of them, but, the flaws that he had, the decisions that he made, his mentality in terms of certain aspects of things, it was like I was looking at a mirror of my future self to the highest degree. And I was just so shocked, because the way they made him seem, at least in terms of my, like his own brothers and sisters, it made it seem like he was just, we were just different. Like he was just like this type of person and did these type of things and stuff like that. We were just different people. But then I realized It may have been a different color, but it's all the same cloth. And it was really eye-opening for me because I could sit there and think about, look at myself and look at my own history. And in the same way that if you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it in our own personal ways. If we don't learn our own family's history and our own cultures, then we are doomed to repeat the same mistake. I think a good example as well is during Black Panther, when near the end of the movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, skip like 2 minutes. But 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So near the end of the movie, when the main character is having the revelation with his father in like dream world or whatever, he's denouncing everything his father and his forefathers did, because he goes from like respecting his father and still obviously respecting him because he helped him become the man who he is today, at the same time learning and understanding that their ways and the decisions that they made is what caused their problems in the first place. And it was just a generational cycle of hate in a loop. And so now that he understood it all, he broke that loop, or at least he tried to. And, a fight ensues, blah, blah, blah. But the main point is that he realized that even though that is his father and, his forefathers before him were keeping the legacy alive, it was up to him to keep the legacy alive, but stay true to what he believed was right and not what they believed was right in their own culture. Because it's all about gaining that understanding for yourself and being self-aware of the time period and the environment that you live in now and how it's different from how they lived, even though a lot of the things are the same. For instance, we still live on planet Earth. So, we still eat the same types of food. Maybe it's a little different now in terms of cooking and styles, but, it's just more about understanding that things change, and being honest with ourselves and looking at our own history will help us bridge the gap between who we want to be and how we can be better than what we were, in a metaphysical sense of how genetically we come from our parents. And it's interesting to think about because at least today, so I was on my way to get some food, right? Today I was hungry and I was like, let me go get some Popeyes. And so I ended up going to Popeyes down by my street on Cimarron or whatever, right? This is in Orlando, by the way. I don't know if you guys jam with Popeyes, but it's, the chicken sandwiches are to die for. And so I ended up getting 2 classic chicken sandwiches with a large mashed potatoes, extra gravy, because I do love that gravy. As I'm waiting in line to order that, there's a lady in front of me. This lady is just, and I'm not even going to describe her because it's irrelevant. What she looks like is irrelevant to the story. So she's making her order, right? And she's ordering like a ton of stuff. And then she keeps like telling the lady, oh, my bad, I forgot this. Oh, my bad, can you add this? Oh, and all this other stuff. And the lady's being kind and understanding. And then she continues to ask for more. And then after that, she finally gets her order done, right? And then I order my food. And this lady at every step of the way is just micromanaging the fast food workers and not in a respectful manner. And that's a polite manner. And that's what I saw when I was watching her. I was like, man, you don't really have to be like that. For instance, in the beginning, we got some like 14-piece box thing for her and her family, I guess. And the lady is putting the thighs and the wings into the box. And she's like, she's giving me too many wings. Stop. I don't want all these wings. And the lady in the back is like, ma'am, there's a certain amount of wings and thighs that we have to put in the box. It's like regulation or whatever. And so she's like, oh, okay. And she was just kind of pissed off at it. In my own way, and what I have been thinking about recently for myself is just the amount of food I eat, and how, I guess, into like a tangent, because this was like my thought process that was kind of going on while she was acting that way, is I was thinking about my own goals for how I want to eat nowadays. And I don't want to eat so as much as I have been, because a lot of times I'll get bloated. And I think that having that balance of just eating a good portion for yourself and just feeling that, not super full, but that natural fullness where you just feel good, that's the kind of feeling that I've been searching for. And that's the balance and what I think is the maturity of kind of understanding your eating habit. Because for myself, usually I'm just eat as much as I want, not as much as I can actually handle. And so I usually buy, at least this was my usual order, I'd usually buy like 2 sandwiches, I'd buy like chicken tenders, some fries, like 2 biscuits, and 2 mashed potatoes. And I just go in throughout like a couple hours, I would eat all that food. But for myself, I was also thinking about how 5-star restaurants, people would, at least me and my friends would always joke about how they give smaller portions for food and stuff like that at higher class restaurants. And then I thought about it for myself. If I was super rich, wouldn't I want to eat the most banging food possible without eating so much? It's finding that quality, that 100% quality, like a nice 10-ounce or 8-ounce steak, medium rare, cooked to perfection by Emerald and Gordon Ramsay himself in the back in the kitchen, just cooking that, and then they bring it out and it's like a small little dish, but when you take a bite into it, it's heaven, and it's delicious. You've had your fill, and now you're ready to go home. You don't have to overindulge. And so that's what my thought process was, and kind of what I've been thinking about, but not so much that I'm trying to be high class. I just want to eat normally. I want to eat what my body can handle and not just overstuffing myself, because I think that having a fit body and a proper diet is what's going to help me into the future in longevity sense. And so that's what was my whole thought process while that whole thing went on. And then as it continued, then we got into the mashed potatoes. So the mashed potatoes and all the stuff and all the sides that she ordered started to come out. And I could see it, not because I guess maybe body language or something like that, but she heard that I also ordered mashed potatoes. And so she thought that 2 of the mashed potatoes out of the 4 were mine. And so she's like, can you give me the mashed potatoes in the front, please? And she was just kept saying that, please, in the front, the ones in the front, because it's not that the ladies were really ignoring her, but you're just getting annoying. Like, relax, we know how to do our job type situation. What the lady didn't realize is that all 4 of the sides were for her. None of them were for me. So the lady just quietly puts all the sides in the bag, and then she's like, oh, well, it's not all for me. You know how it is. And in my head, I'm just thinking, well, no, she clearly doesn't know, but I'm not about to just call this lady out for all these things, because it is what it is. I'm just there to get food, not to have a philosophical debate on ordering. So I'm just watching as all of this goes down. And then she starts to complain even more after she gets her sides and stuff like that all put together. The ladies in the back too are like, I need 2 crispy chicken sandwiches and all this stuff. Pop, pop, pop. And I'm standing there just laughing internally, because I understand her frustration as the manager, because she's trying to get her workers to kind of pick up the pace a little bit, because you've got the drive-thru going on and you've got the inside building up. And so the lady starts to complain, what is taking so long for my food? Meanwhile, she ordered, and not to be like that, but her bill was like $45 at Popeyes. So you can imagine that the amount of food she got was worth the wait. But anyways, she was just rushing them the whole time. And then she calls the lady out in the back, you lady, you not even making the food right now. You keep ignoring her. You're not even listening and all this stuff. And then the lady that's back there, she's like, oh, is she talking to me? And now the drama was about to start, but then she started talking under her breath and just making the sandwiches and stuff. And so you could already see the animosity going on. And so by this point, I had already gotten tired of it. And so I decided to sit down. The funniest part about all this is that they call me up before her to get her food. Oh, by the way, I also forgot to get a drink. And so in between all that, I was like, hey, ma'am, can I just get a quick drink? And she was like, don't worry, I got you. And this plays into it later. So now in the present, I'm getting the food from her, and the lady gives her the most, oh my God, it was the pout, like one of them pouts that you see when it was just funny to me. And she was pouting because I got my 2 sandwiches and mashed potatoes before she got her $50 food. You know what I mean? And she ordered before me. And then before the lady even said anything, the one that was having a problem the whole time, the customer, the worker, was like, don't worry, ma'am, your food is coming. It's just taking a little bit. Here you go, sir. When I get my food, and I don't feel any type of way to this lady. I'm not like that. You know what I mean? It is what it is. She's obviously frustrated, and it's her life. So I just grabbed my food, and then I realized, oh, wait, the drink. And so kind of don't want to just be like, yeah, she said she was going to give it to me for free, so what's up? I was just kind of like, and before I was going to just say, oh, she said she was going to take care of me. But before I even got to say that, the lady next to me was like, oh, the manager said she was going to take care of him. And then the lady kind of looked at her and then looked at me, and I was like, yeah. And so she got the drink, the Coke for me. And I just look at the lady, and she didn't look at me or anything. But in my mind, I was like, it's just so interesting, the relationships that people create in their mind with the people in their surroundings. Like, she saw us as, we're both customers, and we're both ordering food. And I understand where she's coming from in that simple mindset. Oh, I wanted my food now. I wanted my food ASAP. I get it. You're paying for your food, and you're paying for something, so you want to have it immediately. And that's not how things work, but it is what it is. So she finally gets the food, and she gets it like literally right after me. But I think what was cool was that she defended me because she knew I was a customer. And maybe in her own mind, she felt like a vibe. She was being an asshole, but I respect the fact that she was being an asshole, but at least it seemed like she knew she was. And I think that's what's important as well, that you can't just look at these people at face value, and no one on this planet is one dimensional. She's not just pushy or aggressive. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has different layers, and you can't just judge people instantly. Or, I mean, you can, but I personally don't think it's fair to just kind of like label them instantly, because even as I was forming my own biases, they changed, because I'm now like, at least she's considerate. She was being mature about it, but at the same time, she was frustrated. And I can understand too, because I was starving. And as soon as I got those sandwiches, I destroyed them. You know what I mean? But that's neither here or there. So as she's leaving, I'm walking towards my car, and I see the way she's walking to her car, and she's doing like the pitter patter, the quick walking and stuff like that, of like that angry lady that was just like, oh, I'm so tired of this. They're like, da 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 da. And so that whole interaction was just great. And I just want to highlight it because it's just interesting how just in those moments you can see how people treat each other and the relationships of it and all that, because I'm not going to fault these people, and no one should fault them either. It's crazy how you can go to a restaurant and the servers can take like 20 minutes to bring your food, and they're still cooking it and stuff like that. And yet here at this fast food restaurant, which by the way, the manager also brought that up, which was kind of funny in her own like little way at her jab at her coworkers. Like, I mean, this is a fast food restaurant. You know what I'm saying? Food got to come out fast. And she was saying it funny like that. But it's interesting how kind of like the whole dynamic and the relationships that we have with each other kind of happen that way. And so that's pretty much the end of that. And now comes the part after that. So let's talk about what I ordered, right? Because I'm over here talking about how I want to eat right and I want to be lean and I want to be healthier, right? And so I ordered 2 Popeyes chicken sandwiches and a large mashed potatoes with extra gravy. Now, if anybody knows that amount of food, yeah, that's too much for me. Sorry for the hiccup. That's too much for me anyways. And I realized that as I'm driving away, I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a hypocrite. But in my own head, I'm kind of like, oh, I'll just take the other sandwich home and eat it later. I'll eat it for dinner or something like that. In terms of my own goals, I was, I guess, lying to myself. But I think the beautiful part about this is that it all works out in the end, because I end up going to the park, right? And this was just me wanting to kind of just chill and just, meditate for a little bit, at least in my head, and just find my own peace. So I went to a park that I used to go to with my friends many years ago down on same street, Cimarron, just closer to the Orlando airport. And so when I go to the park and I sit down, or my bad, before I even sit down, I get out of my car and I grab my food, and I see the bench that me and my friends used to hang out at all the time. Sitting there, I see like a cart, just a blanket, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I guess people are like playing soccer or something, like someone's having like a picnic or whatever. So I start getting closer and closer, and I realize someone's sleeping. Oh snap, someone's sleeping. And so I just walk by, and I didn't even wake her up or anything. I just kind of sit down, and as I'm opening up my sandwich, she kind of wakes up. And when she wakes up, she gets up and she's like, oh, hello, hey, how you doing today? And then she doesn't really say anything. I was just straight up with her, hey, are you homeless? And then she kind of looks at me, but I didn't say it in any, like, I wasn't saying it in any demeaning, or I was just curious because, she's just there. So I might as well talk to her while I eat. Hey, are you homeless? And she goes, something like that. And it just made me laugh because I just thought about a joke. I've just been watching a lot of Dave Chappelle stand up recently. And he makes a lot of jokes about, or not a lot of jokes, but he always references transgenders and like how they kind of hate him because of his jokes and stuff like that. And it was just something funny that popped into my head. It's like asking somebody, hey, are you a boy or a girl? Something like that. I laughed to myself because it was just funny to me though. But it obviously just a joke, not trying to get into the philosophical aspect of that or emotional or anything like that into the movement. It was just a funny thing that popped up into my head. Ma'am, you don't something like that. Like, come on, just be real, because it is what it is. But it's okay. And after that, I had the 2 sandwiches, and I was like, hey, do you like Popeyes? Do you like Popeyes chicken sandwiches? And she's like, yeah. I was like, would you like one? Oh, I would love one. Thank you. I give it to her, and then she just keeps saying thank you, and then she starts taking bites into it, and I'm like, yeah, that's what's up. And then as I'm trying to, like, I guess have a conversation, we're like, hey, so that's what's up. So do you want some of the mashed potatoes or anything? And she's just kind of like ignoring me and just saying thank you. And so she eats about half the sandwich, right? Wraps it up and then says, hey, I gotta go to the restroom, so I gotta go. And this wasn't me trying to, I guess, I don't really know how to explain this. Maybe there's more psychology to it, but in my own instinctive way, I was kind of like, oh, because I didn't want like her to leave it over there and like someone like take her sandwich or something. I didn't want anybody like touching her food. You feel me? Oh, don't even worry about it. Just go to the restroom. I'll hold the sandwich here to make sure no one, you know what I mean? Like no one touches it. I'll safeguard it, and then you can go do your business. And she's like, no, I'm good. And then she takes her cart and all her stuff, all her belongings, and then she just starts taking her cart over towards the direction of the restroom. And I was like, I mean, well, I understand. I mean, obviously she's homeless, and maybe people aren't usually kind to her, and maybe she just wants to keep to herself, maybe she wants her own inner peace. And so she kind of like starts taking her car and just walking slowly. She pauses a little bit and then she starts heading to the restroom. Well, I'm really happy I got 2 sandwiches now, because now that I gave her one, now my meal seems more manageable. And even then, I ate the Popeye's chicken sandwich and about half the mashed potatoes, because the other half I was like, I'll just save it for when I get home. It was really good, but I was getting full. I could already tell. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And so she kind of just left, and she has no obligation to me to stay or to talk to me or anything like that. It's so cool how in our own ways we find opportunities to prove our own goals and our own ideas for ourselves, because in that moment I had an opportunity to help somebody out of nowhere, and I had no intention to either. I didn't buy the extra food because I was like, I'm gonna go find someone on the street and give it to them. Like, no, I was going to eat it. And so just having those moments, because I want to use this podcast as a platform to reach others on a broader scale, but I want to use the degree in social work to touch people directly. So I have both outlets. I'm doing the most that I can to reach people. And so that's why in that moment, it was just great, because I gave her the sandwich and, I moved on and everything was good. And so after that, to kind of finish the story with the lady, she moves on, she goes to the restroom. And then when she's coming back out and I see her like walking across, instead of coming back to the table, she just continues on her journey and just leaves the park area. More power to her. I hope that sandwich gives her some energy to keep going, because life isn't so easy. I know for myself, I've been homeless multiple times, so I know what it's like to just have that look, or people look at you that way, where you're kind of like, ugh, worthless, ugh, lazy, ugh. Maybe that's not what people were thinking. I can't tell you what people are thinking in their head, unless even if they say it, you never really know. But it's just the eyes that I got. And sometimes when your gut tells you something, you just got to follow it, because at the end of the day, your feelings are real. And so in terms of myself, and I guess in my own growth, now that this podcast has kind of been going on for about 6 months now, I took a little bit of a break, but through these 6 months, I've kind of gone from having a mic and an idea to now having my own car, my own computer, my own resources, and still having the mic and having more people to help me. So now I have, kind of like a little following, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so happy. And I'm so appreciative of all of you who, stay tuned and are still asking me about making sure that I'm still like pursuing in the creation of more episodes and the collab and stuff like that. I really appreciate you guys letting me know that you guys are still interested, even the break that I've taken. And I just want you guys to know that from my standpoint, like, even if you have nothing, as long as you continue to focus on what you think is important and your goals, there will be people that will eventually invest and believe in you, not just monetarily, but emotionally, and it will push you to greater heights, not just for yourself, but for each other. And so that's what I was feeling for myself a lot. And that's kind of like where I'm at now. And that's why I feel so much at peace. And I feel better about the decisions that I make without having so much doubt and anxiety in my own mind about what I should do. And so in terms of other artists and everything that's going on, I want to promote my boy Lil Wave. So Lil Wave has kind of like gained a pretty big following of his own. Like he's got fans all over the world at this point. And and he's still a local artist, someone that's humble and just trying to do his thing. And so he just dropped his album a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to say it straight up, it's pretty fire. I think that you guys should definitely check it out. It's on Spotify and you can see it on YouTube as well. He's rapping about his own struggles and his own goals and how he sees himself and where he wants to be. And in this way, he creates these metaphors and these analogies for himself to create the idea and the image in your mind of how he sees himself and how he wants to go about things. And so I think it's a great way to kind of introduce him, not just him as himself, and hopefully in the future get him on here as well. And of course, Squirtle Squad, squirt. I'm going to have him on here as well. He's hit me up a couple times to let me know. And David, it's just with this pandemic and everything, like I was saying, I just had to take a step back and kind of get in tune with what is really important and how I kind of want to continue my own life. And so that kind of idea in hibernation, how I'm continuing my life, it's just been very important to me. The thing that I guess is the forefront of all this is the Black Lives Matter movement and how these cops have been killing these black men and just killing people in general. And it's just wrong. Even these past couple of weeks, there's been lynchings. It almost feels like we're back to the 1930s. And it's absolutely devastating to kind of see this, in that analogy or in that metaphor, it just means like it just feels like we're back to the ye olden times where, what is it, the Emancipation Proclamation just passed, and all of a sudden everyone thinks that they just have to take a self-righteous approach to the current climate in society, and it's just extremely devastating to see. But it's extremely amazing that we live in this time period right now, because we can never forget that Black Lives Matter has been around for a very long time, years now, promoting their social injustice, or social justice, my apologies, of the injustice and the wrongdoing. And I'm just going to be real with everybody. The only reason that people weren't really able to do anything about it was because everybody was too busy with their own lives. No one had the time to actually put in effort when we're all too busy trying to feed ourselves. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people maybe miss or forget about that. But now it's amazing because we have all this time, all this energy, and all this rage against the system and our own circumstances, that this was the perfect opportunity to make these things happen, to make these moves, to make sure that we need to be more self-aware. We need to be more accountable for our own actions and the things that we do to each other, so that we can create a society for ourselves, or a community that promotes self-growth. And that's like the most important part. And in my own perspective, I think that the reason there is such an issue is because it stems from our own educational system. It's incestual in terms of the way we cycle out these children who become young adults, or who become teenagers, who become young adults, who become these police officers, who come into this society of capitalism and America with basically no actual knowledge on how to maneuver within society itself. In high school, at least for myself, in middle school, and in some of college, unless you decide to do it for yourself, you don't really get classes on how to make friends and how to create relationships. It's more of a natural process that you learn throughout high school, but it's not right. We need to give these people the scientific method of how to deal with people. That is what needs to be taught, like just ground zero. People need to know the process of being able to handle relationships, because that's the most important part about all this. We need to understand how we need to be polite with each other. It's not about a respect thing, because respect is earned. It's about being polite and just understanding that you don't need to treat anybody with toxicity or violence or hate. And you need to keep all that bull crap to yourself, because it's not helping anybody, and it's not helping you. Because if all you do is spew hate and negativity, and everyone around you is not about it, then all you're doing is just filtering that through yourself, and it becomes a cycle within yourself, and you just become to deteriorate, because you're not really gaining anything. You're just kind of repeating the same things over and over again. So it's just sad to see, but that's my whole thing about it. And so in my own way, after kind of everything that's been going on, I decided that I was going to look at some of my old art pieces that I created back in the day. And one of the art pieces that I created wasn't political at all. It was very simple and just something that I thought about. So I like animals, like I guess most people. And one of my favorite animals is the zebra, because I love the stripes. I love the black and white stripes and how they kind of come together. Like one of my favorite things to look up was zebra horse hybrids, because you have that cool combination. But anyway, zebras are some of my favorite animals. And so I decided to draw one. And I decided to draw one in Africa. That was the background of it. And the centerpiece was a zebra. And so at the time when I was making it, it kind of just, I don't know, maybe I was a little too sensitive, or maybe that's just how I am. But I was looking at the zebra and I was like, damn, sucks it doesn't have any colors. It's just black and white. I was colored. So I just kind of got a couple color pencils and just colored them into the different pieces of the body and everything like that. And so as I was coloring it in, I just kind of created this little set piece for myself. So it's a zebra, and I'll just give you the background, or I'll just have a link online so you guys can just literally click it and look at it. It's the painting is pretty self-explanatory, or the drawing. And so it's a zebra with colors in the inside. And so when I saw this and everything that's been going on lately, I'm like, good God, the perfect thing to post for myself, because I don't want to be posting violence or like activity or anything, but I also want to spread awareness. I also like using imagery and symbolism to kind of have people think for themselves and create their own image, their own idea from even other works. And I think that's what's beautiful about it, that even music from back in the day, like Mozart and stuff like that, even though there is obviously a message and a meaning behind it and an intent, we can still take it and ingrain it and understand it and have our own meaning behind it based on how we feel or how the world kind of has been to us. And so pretty much what the piece is, at least for my representation, is that you have the black and white, right? Black people getting killed by predominantly white cops, or just in general. And I know now everybody's like, it's not black versus white, it's everyone versus races, which is obviously true. But the reason this is all happening really is because white people are just killing black people still. And it's become a bit more of a problem than usual. And now the KKK is not considered a terrorist organization. And we're making steps in the right direction, you know? But that's why I saw the black and white, because a zebra is black and white. I also see it as this is an animal in Africa. This is a movement of African Americans who are trying to get, and not just African Americans, but Americans as a whole, trying to get their point across, trying to just stop this senseless violence, really stop this senseless violence and come together as people. So that's what the black and white means. Now, the zebra, it's essentially the vehicle. Now, the zebra is from Africa, so that's what that represents. It's predominantly like black people who are heading the movement along with Americans as well, you know, because we're all American living in America. And this is America. Anyways, so the colors on the zebra represent gay pride and the LGBT community, LGBTQ. It's colored in because they're now, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but online, Gay Pride Month has also come together with Black Lives Matter, and they're now having protests and parades together to promote both movements. And so it's colored in because it's now kind of great to see that they're now a part of it in this kind of like little melting pot of our time period. And so that's what that represents for that. And the reason that it's inside the zebra, although not a main point, is because the movement that has been going on right now, especially this year, is BLM. But gay pride has always, you know, just like BLM, it's been around for years. And so the setting now, we're in Africa. African Americans were taken from Africa. And then why a prey animal? Like, why would I look at it and just decide that it's a prey animal and it's all good? It's because these people that have been getting killed and the people who are protesting and causing riots and just enacting this violence, is they are victims to a system that has been constantly destroying their communities. And it's no longer okay. And that's why I kind of have this piece to encompass all that and just put it out there in my own way of just representing myself and how I view these things. Because yes, we should be out there protesting 100%. And yes, we should be out there helping each other and promoting solidarity. But we should also be taking a step back and looking at all these things and thinking for ourselves, what are the best steps that we can take to help the people important to us, so that it's not just about the overall, but it's also about the people in our own lives, so that we make sure that the people close to us, if they don't have this type of mindset, can change for the better. And so that's kind of like what my whole message behind that picture was. At least that was kind of like the layers of it. But obviously it's up to anybody's interpretation of how you see it. And I'm sure that there's more meanings behind all that. Now, my post. Now, usually I post like a pretty lengthy thing about my description or my philosophical view on it or why I do that. But this time I just thought, you know, really doesn't matter what I think right now in terms of the movement, because everything that I'm thinking is just kind of like what everybody's already feeling. And so instead, I just took a quote from Da Vinci, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." And that was just my description, because rather than me just go into it and talk about it in length, I think that in this time, everyone can kind of just take their own interpretation from it. And whether you just think it's a colorful zebra in a backdrop of Africa and that's it, and it has no political or like emotional meaning to you or attachment, that's perfectly fine. If you find some insight to it, that's great too. It's just really up for interpretation, and that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to put the message out that in this time period right now, there are so many things that we're feeling, and it's just best to kind of express yourself in the best way you know how, and in a positive way, because it's all about promoting growth and awareness. And so that's my thing. Just something that I want to lead into, I guess, for my next episode is that we are the 1%. Out of everything that I've realized, especially these past couple months, everyone always talking about the 1%, how they're abusing us and using us, and they're the weird ones that own the country, which is obviously true and all this other stuff. But I want to let all of you know as well that we are also the 1%. Out of the trillion, bobillion, million of, and sorry to be vulgar, sperm that have ever come into existence, ever, there are only 8 to 9 billion people on the planet right now. Out of the trillions, the bobillion, gazillion, tumtillion numbers, we are the 1% because we made it down to our single-celled version of ourselves. We are winners. We are people that push forward. We are beings that will strive to survive and live. It's a miracle. It truly is. And never at any point in time did our single-celled version of ourselves look over to the other single cells and say, maybe I should give that guy a chance, or I wonder why he's doing the same. No, none of that. It is just you moving forward on your path, and everything else just needs to be pushed to the side. The distractions, the illusions, the things you tell yourself to protect yourself from ever taking a risk, you need to get rid of all of those, because the moment that we are concepted, we took the ultimate risk. We took the risk to live. And now we're here. So from the moment you are born, you are a winner. And don't ever let anybody tell you differently. This is a Jargon podcast, and it was your host, Ruben Gutierrez. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great day. See you next time.